Okay, thank you very much, Matt. I'm delighted to be here, and thanks also to Roger and Elizabeth. Appreciate you all inviting me. I am 1 year out, happily done with my cooling off from being Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. I'm still in a 2-year no-tie period, which I hope you haven't taken offense by my lack of proper dress, but after 4 years of wearing a tie, I figured it was time to take a break. I'm very enthusiastic to be here. This was really one of my favorite topics as Secretary, was this nexus between water and energy. You know, when we put energy and environment together, we had an enormous amount of grumpiness on both sides of the equation. You know, the energy folks said, you know, this green stuff, pricey, unreliable, not that great. We don't do it. We want cost and reliability. Don't give me this renewable stuff. The environmental stuff, some of the water people, some of the critter people said, you know, what is all this energy stuff? This is not good for us. We are in the business of protecting the environment. Why do we care about this? I mean, and water treatment is a fantastic example of why you have to care. You know, it is the second largest energy user behind schools for any municipal budget. It could be sometimes a third of the electric budget for a municipality. You're moving a ton of that water around all the time. And similarly, electricity generation itself uses 20% of the water that gets used around the United States. So we should care about it a great deal. And we think about environmental regulation in a silo where we're saying, you know, we got to regulate down to this level of water quality, but we're not necessarily thinking about what are all the greenhouse gases that are going into that regulation. And I think what we tried to do, and again, in the face of some grumpiness on many people's part, was how do we try to figure that out? Now, I'm not saying we did it perfectly, but we did a lot of trying to figure it out. And I'll get into that in more detail. We're not the only state with putting energy and environment together. Our friends in the Nutmeg State and Connecticut next door under Dan Esty are doing the same thing. They're also trying to figure it out. A number of other states under Carol Browner, President Obama also tried to do some of this energy, climate, environment nexus. So I think my view is, obviously I'm an advocate for it. I think it makes sense. These things are intertwined. The choices we make in environmental regulation and energy regulation really matter as we make greenhouse gases a much more of a central part of our policy going forward. I'll also say I really enjoyed my time as chairman of the MWA, an enormous and proud institution. It took me about a year to figure out, you know, what am I going to do here as chairman? They keep bringing these votes up, you know, we're all kind of moving stuff through. And then I sort of figured out along the way, they have an $8 billion, you know, capital plan, and they're spending, you know, maybe $250 million a year. I can tack some green experimentation onto that, get them moving in a new direction. And I'm really happy to say MWA is, to my mind now, you know, really an international leader in terms of trying to figure out how to use less energy, how to self-generate. So what I'm going to do today is just talk a bit about some of the issues and challenges in water regulation generally. It was very timely that our friends at the Boston Globe, I'm sure everyone in the room read it, about the back and forth around the Blackstone. As a state regulator, I have a point of view about that. All the people from EPA, I'll do my best not to be unduly opinionated about that. But let me talk a bit about what's happening with water regulation in general. Then I'll come back and take a deeper dive into these energy issues. So, you know, first, water quality. Obviously, the kind of uncharted or soon-to-be charted terrain is nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen. Unlike toxic pollutants, the presence of nutrients in water is not by itself a problem, but in excess amounts and in combination with certain natural conditions, the results can seriously degrade water quality. I say this as a Cape Codder. I grew up in Woods Hole, Falmouth High School graduate, and there we have a lot of our bays and estuaries that are polluted with excess nutrient flow. And a lot of causes for that are familiar to all of you as water professionals, but maybe not familiar to broadly to the public: failing septic systems, lack of good sewering, all sorts of other things that are causing it. We in Massachusetts have been trying, struggling mightily with the Mass Estuaries Project and others to try to figure out, you know, how do we get out ahead of this thing? How do we set priorities? Not every ounce of nutrient released in any given area is of equal value, and how do we prioritize these things? And then ultimately the question about financing, which I can say with regret is not something we figured out during my time in state government. This is going to be an enormously expensive undertaking to figure out how will we get Cape Cod to stop leaking nutrients into all of its estuaries. and we don't have a great answer to that at this stage, but it's something we need to figure out, and I think we should figure out before a federal judge makes us figure it out, as is often the case in this area. You know, and as I said, the Globe article yesterday, I think, really encapsulated a timely issue that I know is important about how we're dealing with nutrients in general, and that is, how do we build a regulatory system that is not kind of one size fits all? And I think there are some warring points of view about that, or politely arguing points of view about it, depending on how much time you spend with the Worcester Water District Manager. I'm joking here, and that is, you know, do we want to be looking at this in a purely numeric way, or do we look at it watershed by watershed and try to figure it out? And I think that there has been some debate about that. I think the view from the state has been mostly, we got to figure this out on a case-by-case basis. We can't just do it on a numeric basis. And I think there's some science to both sides of it. So for those who are involved in that fight, carry on, please. Hopefully we'll end up with a situation that we can do this in a sensible and least cost type of way. This has in some ways brought up the question for Massachusetts of should it take back or take over the NEWEA program. And I would just say that a lot of people have a lot of opinions about that. I would say for those who want to see it happen, I would encourage you to find a funding source. I think that is probably the number one thing that stands in the way of DEP really being able to take it. DEP as an agency is down by about 30%, and its workforce is down. It has done a remarkable job through a very difficult budget season. Our other big environmental agency, DCR, is in similar type of shape. They often look longingly at our energy agencies who are funded by charges in the ratepayers, which do not relatively recession-proof, I would say. But finding a dedicated environmental funding stream is really the issue to my mind about whether Massachusetts takes a bigger role in NEWEAs. Another one that I think EPA deserves a lot of credit for is the whole question of mercury. You know, we in our state have done a great deal to cut back on mercury. We've reduced our emissions by 91% since the mid-90s, but we still have some advisories out there, largely due to the import, airborne import of mercury. So getting EPA and supporting EPA as they sort out that question has a lot of importance for us as a region. There's also some interesting issues apart from just water quality related to water supply. I'm sure some of you have followed the bumps and bruises along the path related to safe yield, and which I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say I'm happy I'm not working on anymore. I'm happy my colleagues are working on it, and they're going to do a great job. They're about 2 years into a process of really trying to get at this question. I mean, no one wants to see the Ipswich River running dry, right? Everyone's clear about that. The question is, how does that get fixed? Are you piping a lot more water in from the Quabbin? Are you recharging a lot more water from the water treatment? Are you conserving? Who's conserving? There's a lot of very difficult questions there that need to get addressed. And I think I would say you're going to end up seeing some results from that process this calendar year. And I think it will be something that will lead, I think, the rest of the nation as they grapple with it. So I encourage all those who are involved in the process to continue on. It's a really difficult one. Let me take the transition back to energy at this stage. I guess my argument to you all as water professionals is you need to look at energy as part of your environmental brief. You're figuring out how to keep the water clean, how to protect people's health. How much energy you use is very much a part of that. The 75% of the municipal water processing and distribution costs by itself is energy. Water supply and treatment, 4% of the nation's global power consumption. I already mentioned the fact that second behind schools is the cost of electricity or energy for our treatment facilities. So it is an enormously important point, just simply on the numbers alone. So let me get on to a little bit about what some states are doing. So in our state, as we reformed our energy laws, we did a number of things that I think are of importance and relevance. First is we went from a system of financing energy efficiency that was really a secure amount of money each year regardless of the cost of power, something called a systems benefit charge on your bill. You look at it, you see a little energy conservation charge. It didn't go up or down. We spent $125 million a year for the last 15 years whether or not that was the rational decision or not. It was really sort of a set-aside type of approach. We said, let's try to shift that into a market-based approach. So if energy is very expensive, we should buy a lot more energy efficiency, right? We're trying to put these two things in competition for the first time, which is, you know, a big change for the energy industry. Not used to that. And really, if in Massachusetts, we're ramping up from, in the last year of a 3-year plan, going from the $125 million to about $600 million a year being spent on energy conservation. You think about, we spend as a state about $8 billion, maybe $6 billion a year on energy. As you start to approach 10% of your energy spend being put into energy efficiency, you're starting to do something that's really hit the mainstream. So we ended up seeing in Massachusetts get awarded, much to the great distress of my friends in California, by the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy. California got it every single year since they set up the scorecard. And this year, Massachusetts received the #1 ranking. And there's all sorts of talk in California about how bad that all is, but I'm happy to say they really are yesterday's news out there.